everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Between Sundays with Brian Hughes. I'm Elijah Schiarelli, consequently, and I am going to kind of serve as your host in this new podcasting adventure for the actual subject matter expert, the person you're actually here for, Brian Hughes. Now, there's a lot about this podcast that we want to get into, the reason it exists, where it's going to go, and all of that. But this first episode, which you're listening to right now, is really just a setup for what's going to come after. So we wanted to give you just a little bit of an idea about what you're getting into when you listen to this podcast. Again, why it exists, where it comes from. And I'm going to let you, Brian, do a lot of that.
Yeah.
Why you wanted to do this, what's your motivation behind it, why it's called Between Sundays, all of that. And I'll interject where I can, but for the most part, I'm going to let you take it and explain to these fine folks listening why we're here.
Well, many years ago, I got exposed to, I was really young in my career. I wasn't in ministry yet. I was in business, and I got exposed to a guy named Stephen Covey, who I'd never heard of before, and I went to a seminar, and he wrote the most outstanding work, one of the most outstanding personal development works called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of those habits is you begin with the end in mind. And so I thought that a good way to launch this podcast was to say, well, let's talk about what the end goal is. Instead of, this is not just an adventure in hearing me spew more words for no good reason. There's got to be an end to it. And so let me just set that aside for a second, just hold that thought, begin with the end in mind, with another great, amazing author that I pay a lot of attention to is John Maxwell. He's sort of the leadership guru of our day. And I was reading a book. I don't remember which one because I've read, I think, all of his books. Anyway, I was reading one of his books in the last few months, and he, in it, says, I don't say yes to all the speaking invitations that I get. And my first thought was, of course, the guy probably gets 5 a day. He said, I evaluate them based on what they're asking me to talk on. And he listed, and I think there were 5, but that doesn't really matter right now. He listed the subject matters that he felt like he had expertise on.
Okay.
And he said, these are whatever the 5 things that I feel like I can add value to. I have some personal experience and I have some training on, and I know what I'm talking about. So if they ask me to come talk about these things, I'm willing to say yes. Then it's got to fit my calendar, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But I don't talk about subjects outside of these areas. Even if people like hearing me talk, I don't feel like I'm qualified to discuss or talk about with an authority, any authority on these subject matters. So I started thinking, if you begin with the end in mind, we have to say, what is this about? What am I trying to accomplish here? If I can't articulate that, then frankly, a listener shouldn't pay attention.
Right.
And then secondly, using Maxwell's concept of what are the subject matters that I feel like I have some level of authority on, and I started to break that down. And I said, what does actual authentic authority mean? It means both some level of experience, some personal experience in, and some level of training in. And I use the word training loosely here because I don't mean you don't necessarily go to school for it, although that can be part of it.
Yeah.
And that fits a couple of my categories. But there's also some in-depth reading or some or you've been to a bunch of seminars, you've paid attention, you've listened to subject matter experts. You feel like over time you've developed both a classroom knowledge and sort of an on-the-job training experience if you merge those two. And I feel like there are 7 big categories, and we could sort of put subcategories under each of these subjects to ad nauseum. But if I can put these in great big buckets, for me, there are 7 areas that I feel like I have some authority to talk about, and I feel good about being able to say, hey, I know something about this subject, both from experience and from some level of training. Because, and this gets to the title of it, I'll go over the 7 subject matters in a minute, but it gets to the title of it is that there are only 52 Sundays in a year.
Right.
It's just math, and if you catch the right year on and the way the calendar falls, you might get 53, but
never more than that.
Never more than that. And I've been very intentional about. We can talk about this another time. I've been very intentional about developing a robust, really skilled and gifted teaching team, of which you're a part of, Elijah, and there are 4 other people on that teaching team in addition to you and me. And I really love cultivating that. But what that cost me is that now I don't have 52 anymore.
Even less time.
I get like through 28.
Yeah.
So these are subjects that I feel like I have some, I can add value to people's lives with, but I don't have enough. There's not enough time for me to get into it in an in-depth way with only the platform time that I have assigned myself. I mean, this was my own doing, but I think it was healthy for our church. So I feel like I can add value, and I get these questions. I get questions about these subjects a lot, some more than others.
And right before you get into them, I want you to know, because there probably are listeners out there, our hope is anyway, there are listeners out there who don't actually know what it is that you do.
Oh.
Because, I think most of the people who come are going to know who you are. They're going to know your background. They're going to be a part of the church that we have the privilege of being a part of. But with any hope, God will use this to reach out to people who don't go to our church. So
that's right.
I'll invite you to talk about a little bit about this as well. But because if I imagine myself in your seat in this instance, I might not want to do this about myself necessarily. But you're the senior leader and founding pastor of our church, Passion Community Church. This is a multi-site, large church in Central Virginia, but it broadcasts around the world online. We have people literally watching from around the world each week, which is awesome. It's a blessing. And you've been doing that the church has existed for 24 years. 24 years, but you were a pastor before that as well. You have a doctorate. You've gone to seminary. The list is long. You are educated. You've been doing this a long time, which speaks to the experience and the training you were talking about. But just talk a little bit more about how you got here, why it is you do what you do, the calling that you feel from God to do it, and then maybe that can dovetail us into these specific things.
I like that. So I believe firmly that everybody's a 10 at something. And, I might aspire to be a musician as good as you, but the truth is I'm never going to be as good as you. You have a unique giftedness, a unique talent, and it's also a skill you've developed, right? So I could work on a skill. You could teach me a skill, and I could attain a certain level of skill. But then there's a certain gear that only talent can take you to, right?
Yeah.
And I think people often look at their own lives and see it as some sort of derogatory or negative statement to say, well, I'm never going to be that. I don't see it that way at all. I think that part of our life goal ought to be discovering what it is that God uniquely gifted me to do and living fully into that, instead of wasting a bunch of time lamenting the fact that I'm never going to be, a world-renowned artist. As much as I might want to,
right?
That isn't in the cards for me, and that's okay.
Yeah,
because I want to live into the fullness of who God made me to be. Well, for me, that I only have one gift, and I think I really only have one gift, and that's with words. I know how to use words. I've been in front of people my entire life since I was a little kid, and so. Being able to know how to sort of grab people's attention and craft a talk or a message, whether it's a spiritual message like a sermon or other kinds of leadership talks, I've been good at that my whole life. Now, my skill has gotten better.
Sure.
But that has been
sort
of my
some
calling.
Level of
That's right.
At the beginning. Yeah.
And there was a guy named, was it Seth Godin, who wrote the book, The Tipping Point? I think that's right.
Okay.
Anyway. And he talked about, this became well known in leadership circles. He talked about 10,000 hours. And he talked about when you get to 10,000 hours, you develop there's a certain tipping point there. And so when it comes to using words, and really I think about, if I had to say this completely honestly, there are two things I'm really good at, and that is words and leadership. And I have gotten to 10,000 hours in both of those arenas. And so I think about the fact that I can, because I've been in front of people all this time, we planted the church. Early on, I did all of the teaching, nearly all of the teaching. So I was on 52 Sundays, and we did like worship nights and midweeks, and I did everything. I did all of the talking.
Right.
And then over time, we've developed this teaching team. But we planted the church 24 years ago. I was a pastor of another church for 2 years and 8 months before that. I did like an interim pastor at work before that. I mean, I've been talking in front of growing groups of people for a long, long time. And in that, I've also been invited to personal spaces where people say, "Hey, I've got this challenge. Would you meet with me? My wife and I would like to talk to you, or my husband and I would like to talk to you, or can you meet with our teenager?" And so I have met with countless people in more of a one-on-one kind of pastoral care situation that allowed me to have glimpses into real life personal situations that they're trying to navigate and trying to figure out, how do I wisely advise this person with this life circumstance? Well, those life circumstances then accumulated so that I can say with some level of authority that there are certain categories of things that happen all the time. I get questions about, how do I do something about my marriage that is in some level of trouble, or how do I help us get out of this funk? I get that question hundreds of times a year, literally hundreds of times a year. And because I've counseled so many couples in how to do this, and because I've read so much on it, I feel like I have something to say about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the point is that the experience being in front of crowds then offered a gateway to people sitting down with me one-on-one, and that gave me the experience in terms of coaching them in these kind of 7 categories, if you will.
Okay. Well, so what are the 7? What are the 7 categories?
Well, I mentioned the first one. The first one is marriage, and I'm very passionate about this. I've been married for 36 years. Susan and I have really navigated a lot. We've figured out a lot. There are some do's and don'ts that we've learned along the way, and importantly, I've read every book I can put my hands on when it comes to marriage. We've been on marriage retreats every year. We go to seminars. We listen to people. We're constantly learning and growing. And I feel like we also, along the way, have accumulated sort of this wealth of knowledge that I feel responsible to steward, not just to say, well, now we have been able to employ these things to make a great marriage on our own, but we can deploy them and help other people around us who are interested. Now, I've done that a lot in one-on-one settings, and that's helpful. The thing is that you can't scale that.
Sure.
So a podcast like this will allow me to maybe distribute some helpful knowledge about marriage in a more widespread way that you can't necessarily do on one-on-one or on weekends in messages.
Right.
Yeah. So marriage is a big deal to me. I also love talking about leadership. As you noted, our church has grown sizable, and our organization can't grow. It rises and falls on leadership. I could write a book on leadership mistakes. I've made a bunch of them. I also have learned along the way how to do really great leadership, I think. And so I love talking about leadership. I do get asked a lot. I get asked a lot by small business owners and other people to help them with leadership that is not necessarily directly tied to I could tie it all to spiritual truth, right? I'm not trying to take that away, but it's not always necessarily like, please show me in the Bible how to do this. Sometimes people are just saying, I'm struggling to lead my business, and can you help me? And I have read a ton. We have, you've been on the team with me for a long time.
Yeah.
We do a lot of deep diving into leadership, gurus of leadership who are followers of Jesus, and many who are not, but who are also teaching us. I've gained some knowledge about that. I feel like I can be helpful with leadership. And then, of course, the next category I would say would be the Bible. As you noted, I was in seminary for 7 years. I have a doctorate. I'm not a scholar, but I spent a lot of time both in an academic setting and in a church setting.
Yes.
Studying the Bible. I know something about it, and I think I can help others when it comes to that. So there will be times when we'll just do deep dives in the Bible when it's appropriate and when it's needed. And then the fourth category is related, but I would say is also different, and that is discipleship and spiritual growth. So how do we help a person not just connect with the truth about God, but internalize it and become followers of Jesus? And those are two different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do I help somebody more fully live into the life of following Jesus? That's hard stuff, but I know something about it in all these years, helping people become more fully devoted followers. And then the next category, the fifth category, is also somewhat related to that, but it kind of encompasses a bunch of them, and that is church growth.
Okay.
So there are lots of church leaders out there, pastors, if you will, who who know something about discipleship. They know how to make disciples of their people and help them become more devoted followers of Jesus, and they know something about the Bible.
Right.
But what they can't seem to figure out how to do is grow a church.
Yeah.
And that's a different skill. And I think I am not, in no way do I mean to imply that I think I know everything there is to know about church growth. I'm still learning about church growth too.
Yeah.
But having gotten our church to a few thousand people, I think I can speak with some level of authority on some basics of how you get there and some techniques, and that are all God honoring along the way.
Sure.
And then that takes us to the sixth category, which is probably more related to the first two. I didn't order these really well, but anyway, the sixth one is family systems. So part of my doctorate was I studied Bowen family systems theory. I did it in depth, spent a year on it. And I had to use my own really, really messed up family of my family of origin as a way of
real world
understanding,
experience.
man. And out of that, I really learned to help people look at their family of origin in a different way and get healthy because of it.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about this subject, and I think oftentimes people are, when they're trying to figure out how they navigate their messed up family. And by the way, everybody has a crazy family. Everybody. We all just try to keep it secret. But I promise you, even families that look like they're put together have a bunch of crazy in it. That's just life. And so what we try to do is we often navigate that by sort of shooting at the wrong target. And I think if we can understand family systems, we find ourselves getting healthy if we know what to do. And I can help people know what to do.
Yep.
And then the seventh category, which I really also am very passionate about, is sort of personal leadership or personal management, which includes a big category is time management. How do I actually use my limited time? Every person, I don't care how wealthy you are or how skilled you are or gifted, you get 10,080 minutes a week. That's all you've got. And Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world, still can't buy one more second.
Right.
This part is distributed with amazing equity and equality. So how do we then allocate our time in a way that doesn't make us feel like we just don't have enough? We have enough time. We just have to figure out how to allocate it, how to prioritize, how to say no to stuff. And I spend a lot of time still refining my own life about this, but also helping others with it too. So those are the seven big buckets that I want to spend most of the time talking about.
Definitely, and we will parse down through those as we go. You know, we don't at this point necessarily even know where this podcast is going to go into the future, or how long it's going to go. Our hope is that God will just use it, of course, for as long as He intends, and we want to do it for a long time. And so, over the course of its lifetime, we'll be talking about what Brian was just talking about, one of those seven categories in some form or fashion. Our plan right now is to sort of do this in what we might consider like a series with a part 1, part 2, part 3 as we go through marriage, for example. We might have several episodes in a row on marriage, and then we'll maybe move on to time management and have several episodes in a row about that. But as you mentioned, they're not in any particular order. They're not really going to be in any particular order either. Of course, as always, we're going to try and listen out for the voice of God and help direct us, while also using that experience and that learning to just help however that we can. In our experience, mostly Brian's experience, about how he's navigated these things and how you might be able to as well. So that's really it. I mean, that's the whole thing. That's the whole shebang. We'll have some like bonus content here and there, maybe some Q&As. Our hope is to get Susan in here at some point, for certain things. We might have other guests as well over the course of it. Again, we just don't quite know exactly what that'll look like, but that's really the gist of it. So this will be a platform to talk about all the things that we just really can't get to on a Sunday as related to what Brian is really passionate about, what he knows a lot about. So that's really it. Do you have anything else you want to?
No, I think I do think that there are times when stuff comes up. This is an interesting thing that happens on at PCC at our church from time to time. Is we have a plan, right?
Right.
And we plan weeks in advance, sometimes often months in advance. We know what's going to happen on a particular Sunday way in advance, and then something happens.
Sure. Yes.
And we call an audible. We talk about it that way. We say, we got to call an audible because something happened. And this is not very often, but it does happen. And I also hope that this podcast will provide a platform for us to say, hey, something happened.
Yes.
We weren't able to call an this. It doesn't make the cut to call an audible on a Sunday morning.
Yes.
But it's on everybody's mind.
Oh, yeah.
So how can we get that? How can we talk a little bit about that too? And I would love to. I think there will be times when that'll happen here too.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you can rely on this to come out Monday mornings. They're about going to be 30-ish minutes apiece, so it's digestible on your commute to work or while you're starting work or whenever. Obviously it just lives on the internet, so whenever you can catch it, that'd be great. We ask you to just go ahead and subscribe now, to share it with the people that you love, that you care about, who you think might be interested in this. And by the time you hear this, we will have already released other episodes as well. So you can dive right in and then just follow along with us as we go. Thank you so much for your time listening. Thank you, Brian, for doing this,
It'll be fun.
answering the call, and we'll see all of you soon.